Hi, I'm Judith Leblein, and welcome to another edition of Conversations. As we walk up and down the aisles of the supermarket or the local convenience store, you see thousands of products. Well, what's going to make one of those products jump off the shelf and into your cart? I bet you've wondered about that. Well, joining me is Katherine Kish from a company called Market Entry right here in Central Jersey. Katherine, welcome to Conversations.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here.
Now, tell me a little bit about your company. I find what you do fascinating.
You know, the most exciting time to get involved with a product, I believe, and to get involved with people, is when they're fresh to something. And there's nothing more energizing than being with inventors and people who have just come up with what they think is the best idea in the whole wide world. And Market Entry specializes in working with people and companies at this time when they've developed a new product or a new service or even a whole new company.
So besides that kind of product, a tangible product, you also, Market Entry also helps to market associations or causes too.
Nonprofit organizations of all sorts. I do work with universities, with associations, with chambers, all kinds of groups, because you know everyone needs to have marketing, and it's something that we used to think of as just something that happened in the for-profit world, but now we see that nonprofits and for-profit companies need to focus on marketing.
You know, I once heard someone say about another person, what a shameless self-promoter. And then at first I thought, oh, they're right, that's a terrible thing. And then I said, wait a minute, there's no one lining up to promote me. So
right.
There's someone out there as Market Entry doing that kind of thing.
That's right. And you know what? One of the sort of sub-areas that we specialize in is helping people through various transitions in careers, because we find that people need to be packaged as well. They need to have their attributes talked about, and they need to have some sometimes rough edges polished off.
Now, how did Market Entry come about, though? This is 20 years old, your company.
Yes.
But before that, what was your training? How did you come to this?
Well, before that, I was only 10 years old.
Well, I agree.
But, however...
And packaged quite well.
I was very excited about the world of ideas and the world of communications when I was young, and I started out as a teacher. My father was one who said, "Aha, young lady, you must graduate with you know, an employable skill in your back pocket." So
they'll always need teachers.
That's right. Back in the days when I graduated, teaching was one of the few options for women. I taught for several years and went to graduate school and decided that rather like the person who whispered plastics to the graduate, somebody whispered broadcasting in my ear. And I thought, well, that's it. That's where ideas happen. That's where ideas are communicated. And so I was delighted to find an opportunity at NBC. They were looking for someone with educational credentials. So Shazam, it was the perfect opportunity. And I was with NBC for 5 years, and then I went to work for a large publishing company, and then from there went to work with the Singer Company, which was not only in the sewing machine business, but in the education and training business. So I had a long corporate career, and then the time got to be right. You know, the voices started to say entrepreneurship. And I think there started to be some real encouragement about 20 years ago for women to try some things on their own. Also, technology was beginning to be in place. I mean, it was very, very early on, but personal computers were starting to be available, telephone systems were the fax machine had come down in price. And if you think about it, those are the tools that allow small business to be on sort of an equal footing with big business. Years and years ago, I mean, the idea of communicating internationally meant that you had to be in a major corporation and you walked down the hall to the telex machine. No one even knows what a telex machine is today. But today, even the tiniest businesses have fax machines, which enable you to be available for business and open 24/7 anywhere in the world.
So for marketing, you didn't have to be on Madison Avenue. You could make a home here in Central Jersey and have a thriving business, as you have.
Absolutely. I started my business first in Boston, actually, and found that what we need for a business like this are things like airplanes, telephones, and the various tools of business like PCs. But we can be very portable.
Now let's talk a little bit about trends, because it's your job and market entry's job to predict trends long in advance, because product development takes a long time. What kinds of trends do you see evolving that we may be seeing new products or at least new marketing approaches towards?
Well, all kinds of interesting things. And you know, I often say to clients that ideas are in the air. It's amazing how we respond to ideas. I mean, have you ever noticed that you'll have a Shazam, something will come to you, and then you'll discover that several other people you know are kind of thinking about the same thing. Well, we respond to the clues around us, we respond to our cultural context, and it's amazing often how many people come to the same thing at the same time.
Great minds with all the same great idea.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you have, you have sort of the professional trend changers. When the designers, fashion designers, decide that the 70s are back again, or better,
oh God,
that's
I hope
the
not.
worst decade of all.
No, that's true. Bell bottoms and fry boots, all that has been back.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, then the media machine picks that up, and it takes it from somebody's wild idea, and pretty soon it becomes institutionalized, and lo and behold, we're all buying these things that we said we'd never wear again.
They seem to be changing faster because of those electronic mediums, as you've been talking about, where a trend may have lasted a year or years.
Absolutely. Now,
to me, seems 6 months and it's gone.
The half-life of ideas is just becoming shorter and shorter. We find that I was trained in strategic planning, and it used to be that organizations would do these sort of, full-blown strategic planning exercises. It would take them 6 or 8 months to write a plan that was going to last 5 years. Well, now we realize that you can't plan that way anymore. One of the things that we see is that in organizations, authority is pushed way out, down into the field. They're much more democratic. Reason being, you have to be closer to where it's happening. And you cannot have, strategic planning concepts that come from on high and are promulgated by the great leader. It has to be much more organic. People in organizations are out there feeling for new trends. I'm fascinated with a book written by a fellow named Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point.
Yes,
and he talks
I'm
about
familiar with
viral marketing, and that's become very hot. And the idea is that you have to be constantly alert to what the opinion makers and trendsetters are doing. Oftentimes, trendsetters are very young people who live in urban environments and are the first to decide that hip hop is the right thing.
Well,
or
let's
some new fashion
take a
trend.
look at, for example, the company FUBU, For Us, By Us, a young group of African American entrepreneurs that really came up from the street, the look of the street, and has hit, and they are now multimillionaires and stylists to the stars, and that came up from the street, recognized by our kids.
Right.
Can we talk
and
a bit?
spotters.
Yeah, and it seems that the Generation Xers and our teens and our children are the real trendsetters today. I mean, right now, for example, in the teen market in certain areas of the state, you only go to one store to buy your clothing, and it's a $25 T-shirt instead of a $5 T-shirt.
Right.
And so is that a new emerging market, the Gen Xers?
Well, I think it's even younger than Gen Xers. I mean, what we're seeing is that young people, tweens, the group from 8 to 12, are influencing family decisions enormously. There has been a shift in where authority is in a family, and as you have,
in some families more than others,
as you have, in many cases, both parents working, you have kids at home. They're oftentimes they are the grocery shoppers. Oftentimes, they are the people who determine what the family needs in the way of entertainment products and services. They are enormously influential, and becoming so at a younger and younger age. There have been studies done recently that just amaze me that children as young as 2 and 3 are aware of brands.
Oh, absolutely.
And you don't just say to a young girl, you know, my goodness, your dress is wonderful, without that child saying back to you, oh, well, it's a Hannah Anderson, or it's a, you know,
that is amazing.
DKNY.
At that young age, my mother laid my clothes out on the bed, and that's what I put on me, and off I went to school.
Not anymore, not anymore. We have very, very young children with strong ideas about what they want to wear, what they want to eat, what they want to do.
Now, besides that market, which is so strong, and you know, I love how you mentioned influence in your line of work. They say purchase influence. I call that the wine effect. I want it, I need it,
yes,
and they repeatedly do that and wear you down. The other big market I've seen the folks at Disney really capture, and this is the empty nester, the younger senior. Is this a new market emerging, and what do they look like as a buyer?
Well, it's a very interesting market. It's a market with a fair amount of money. It's a market where time has been a real problem for them, and they're now seeing the great luxury that there might be a little bit more time, because hopefully the kids have grown, and hopefully they've left home not to come back for a while. I mean,
You have to sell the furniture.
yeah, that's another problem altogether. We're seeing many young people coming back home, but that boomer generation is, we hope, going to be the longest living, healthiest. They are active consumers of preventative health care, exercise, nutrition, nutraceuticals. I mean, this is a group, classically they've been described as enormously self-centered, and it will continue.
As they grow older, that's going to continue and maybe accentuate.
Well, if you think about it, as anyone grows older, you know, when they reach, we talk about the young old and the old and even the middle-aged old, but as people get to be at least the young old, they start to focus in more on themselves again, because hopefully some of their responsibilities have sort of retreated a little bit. The downside of that is that when you get too focused on yourself, oftentimes you become self-centered, you become hypochondriacal, you know, heaven knows. All kinds of things can happen, but it's a very interesting age, and I think we will see the most aggressive kinds of information consumers that we've ever seen. I mean, if you think about the stats on internet use, the primary function, or one of the greatest categories of internet information searches, are around health. And once again, it's this boomer generation driving that.
Well, you know, buying on the internet, for example, it has been off to a rather slow start than what the pundits originally thought. And I've been observing more and more older adults surfing the web, and that tells me that it will soon be mainstream to buy and to buy, for example, and get a bargain for somebody that perhaps is a young retiree. They're going to go to the net, and I see more and more seniors and older adults going to the World Wide Web.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Not always to buy, though. Oftentimes to do research prior to a purchase, or to find out everything there is to know about something or other. I mean, that's why I say I think I see this generation as being enormous information consumers. One of the things that we've...
Do you think they're a little bit leery still of buying and spending?
Well,
still want to touch? That's the way they came up as a consumer?
Early on, the hottest items that were sold on the internet were things like CDs and books and name brand toys, things that they were branded. People knew what they were, and the issue was, where can you find them easily and where can you get the best price? I think people are beginning to move a little bit into less tangible kinds of items, but I still believe that the best combination that we see for merchants is to have both an internet site, maybe a catalog, and for sure a brick and mortar store. There you find the best possible combination, because the consumer can then go back and forth between, you know, depending on what stage of the buy decision they're in. They can decide to go look at something, they can decide to look at it in a catalog, or actually have the convenience of finding out whether the inventory is there and the
I think too there's an impression that they're solid if there still has a store and there's still a catalog. They're a sure thing.
And there's convenience. You know, the classic, you look at a retailer like Eddie Bauer. Eddie Bauer has all three of those things, which means that you can buy on the net, or you can buy in the catalog and return if need be to a store. So that's the ultimate sort of belt and suspenders confidence for the
That's the way I look to see if they have all three. If you're just joining us, this is Conversations. I'm Judith Leblein, and with me is Katherine Kish from Market Entry. Tell me, sometimes companies or products approach us in the totally wrong way, where you almost feel like you are imposed upon, almost beaten down.
You aren't talking about those calls that come at 6:30 in the evening.
Some of those, but some that are almost insulting. Tell me, as you walk a client through, they want to introduce a new product, what kinds of things do they go through to get a new product introduced? Right from naming the product? I mean, would a company like yours be involved, and where do they come up with some of these things?
Well, there are too many companies right now whose names begin with A and sound alike. I am even confused by them. Everyone wants to be at the head of the Yellow Pages listing.
Oh, yeah, that was an old guise of marketeers, wasn't it? If you have an A, you start with an A, you'll be the first person they look at.
That's it. But if you've noticed, you know, Aventus, Accenture, all these new corporate names are coming in the A's, and that's dangerous, because what you have is confusion. And the last thing in the world you want is confusion. What you want is distinction. What you want is uniqueness. And it's an interesting modeling process. As a marketer, as a product developer, you want to be very respectful of your potential customer. You want to make things clear to them. You don't want them standing in a supermarket or drugstore aisle scratching their heads trying to figure out what your product does. You don't want them seeing a very expensive ad in a magazine or a newspaper or on television and not understand what your product does. I mean, how many times have you seen even wonderful commercials, funny ones, and then you cannot for the life of you name the company that sponsored that commercial?
That is so timely, because the Super Bowl, which has become the advertising Super Bowl, just last year and the year previous, there were so many .coms, funny, inventive commercials, but when they
being shot out of cannons,
just so funny,
strange things.
And when people were interviewed afterwards, they remembered the funny commercial for the theatrics of it, but they couldn't remember the company or what they did.
Right.
And that's a danger today. We're almost too slick.
Well, almost, and almost too funny sometimes. One of the things that I've seen a lot of lately is people either being openly nostalgic or else trying to tune back into older, maybe better, slower times, have resurrected old slogans. You see the Campbell Soup Company is kind of starting to go back to the good. There was a delightful little commercial on recently, a spelling bee of youngsters who started to spell microphone, M-I-C, and then you see the
K-E-Y.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so suddenly they were keying back into an old campaign, and I think we're going to see a lot of that.
Well, you know, when you look at that, it hits so many things that you've already talked about. You've talked about the empty nester, and certainly those of us that grew up with the Mickey Mouse Club are now in a generation where we may be bringing our grandchildren or our children to Disney World, or ourselves for that romantic getaway, the two empty nesters.
Can you picture a romantic getaway at Disney World? But they are selling it.
It's working. But I also think, Katherine, that it has an awful lot to do with what this country's just been through. And I think a conversation about marketing can't go without talking about September 11th. This hit us all at so many levels. But in the business world, in the world of marketing, products, travel, tourism, some observations from you. How will things change? How do we have to change in how we reach out to people? I hear that we want to nest. They were selling fireplace logs, snack food. attendance at movies has gone down, but the rental of videos. I'm seeing and hearing nesting. Is this what's happening?
Sweatsuits were a big seller during the holidays. These sort of comfortable clothes to be a couch potato.
And it was a red, white, and blue Christmas.
Yes.
And everywhere you go, I say it's about time. We weren't carrying our flag around as proudly as we should have been for the last few years, so I think it's time. Are these the trends? Will it continue long past September 11th? What are some of your thoughts and observations?
Well, unfortunately, we have very short attention spans. There were some who were predicting that we wouldn't remember very long at all. I think the people who help us create and continue memories are helping by, in the short term, having monthly anniversaries on the 11th, reminding us that it has been 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever, since the event. I think people were shaken enormously, but we are such a we live in such a noisy world. There are so many things tugging at us all the time. People focus very tightly on their own families, and I think we're drawn even more so to that as a result of September 11th. I think, we had, it looked like it was going to be a really dismal holiday shopping season, and you know that in some cases merchants make over 50% of what they make in the year in the fourth quarter. So it looked like it was going to be dreadfully dismal. It picked up just a little bit right around the Christmas holiday. And so the season ended with about 2.5% up in terms of year-to-year sales. But as you said, the people who bought were buying things that could be used at home, things that did not seem extravagant. I heard a great many people talking about the fact that they weren't as anxious about the holidays this year. They were more comfortable. They felt that they were focusing more on hugging mom, hugging the kids, playing with the dog. I mean, doing the things that make life really wonderful. They weren't focused so much on the next big acquisition.
So would you be then telling a client to sell those feelings,
Absolutely.
to sell their product? And do you think that will last a bit more, this idea of going back to what's familiar?
Well, I think a lot of things have to do with what happens with the stock market and how people feel about their finances. We, in many cases, I think, are confusing some of the effect of the implosion of the .com market, the real reduction in billions and even trillions of dollars of value in our corporations with the fall of the stock market. So we had the combination of this enormous thing that was going to change the world, namely the internet. It was going to change the way all of us did business and lived our lives. Well, now we're saying, well, maybe it's a tool to be used by all of us in our lives, in our businesses, but maybe it's not an earth-shattering thing. Then we had this enormous bubble in our stock market, and people were spending money that they didn't really have. They had it on paper, but they felt rich because their 401ks were doing magnificently. Well, all of a sudden, that excess that they had, that extra that made them feel confident, disappeared. So you've got many things happening right around September 11th. So it was not just the tragedy. The tragedy was terrible in itself, but so many other factors came to bring about a feeling of not as much self-confidence. I think everyone kind of stepped back.
So luxury items, do you think still will continue to be down? Maybe smaller luxuries. I've read that women's high-end lipstick sales went up.
Affordable
as
luxuries,
affordable
yes.
sort of treat, but
Yes.
maybe you wouldn't buy that new coat, but you did buy that new lipstick. Do you think some of that will stay?
For a while. For a while. We'll see. As I say, it sounds like Alan Greenspan is making noises about the fact that the recovery, the economic recovery, may not be as quick as we had thought. It's sounding like the Fed is going to reduce interest rates again. Now, the one thing that I think has been so powerful is the the fact that the consumer market has held up, mainly because people are buying houses because interest rates are so low right now that it's a marvelous time for a family to take on what will probably be their major asset. And also, the automobile manufacturers looked at how to get product moving, and they said, we've got to make it financially desirable for people to do that. So they in essence loaned people money free. You can't beat free money. So we had a real, wonderful curve on housing and on large capital goods like automobiles that was going counter to the way people were looking at the rest of the economy. So, I'm a real believer in paradox. And this is a time of enormous paradox. I mean, on one hand, things are
You're buying a second house.
Yes.
And the second is you're shopping at Target.
Exactly, exactly. And the fact that, if you look at the big box retailers, that was the piece of the whole merchant world, the retailer world, that did so well at Christmas time. People were shopping at the Targets of the world, at the Walmarts of the world. They were.
You call that reverse chic?
Well, I do,
chic?
especially
Target?
how chic. Yes, Le Target and J.C. Penney. I mean, people. It's amazing to see all the $50,000 vehicles parked out in front of Sam's Club.
Well, I'm happy for the company, but I'm not glad about the long lines. Well, I'm going to do some marketing for you because I think that you're a bit too humble to do it. But you have received many awards here in New Jersey. YWCA Tribute to Women in Industry Award. You chair the Princeton Area Chamber of Commerce, the New Jersey Association of Women Business Owners, and something new that you'll be adding to your list, and that's the Women of Distinction Award from the Girl Scout Council here in Central Jersey.
I'm thrilled about that.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you, and I know you are a past award winner as well.
Yes, I am, so welcome to the sorority, my friend.
Thank you.
Well, I could speak with you about these issues forever. It's so fascinating to me, and I'm sure our viewers have enjoyed it. And now when they pick up that product and they look at the name and the packaging, they'll understand a little bit more about that world of marketing. Katherine Kish, Market Entry, thank you so much. And there is absolutely nothing like a good conversation, and you certainly have supplied that today. Good luck to you, and again, congratulations on the Women of Distinction. Please join us again for another edition of Conversations. I'm Judith Leblein. Thank you.